One of the challenges we had just completed a system conversion of our student information, our human resources information, and our financial information systems. We did not have a good way to do reporting at that point, or to provide information to people throughout our campus. And so SAS really was the tool that we chose, in addition to the great visuals, just to simply be able to pull data from our system, combine it, create our files, create all the background snapshots that we needed to be able to do reporting and to provide visuals for our campus. You can do things that's public facing, you can do things that are internal, you can do things that are security based, so there's all different levels of reporting that you can make available through the SAS Visual Analytics tool. And then again, the ability to connect to various systems across campus. I mentioned that a lot, but that's a big deal for us because it has given us so much more data than we have ever had before, and some data that we had never had access before. And so I think the complete suite of tools, and again, within the visual analytics, there's now visual statistics, which allows you to do the analytics part and the predictive modeling part, which again will be kind of our next step down the road. In addition to the fabulous visuals that we can now create, again, Enterprise Guide allows us to pull data, to organize data, there's data management tools, and then the ability to connect with various other systems across campus. Higher ed is notorious for different offices having different side systems, and the ability for us to connect to all of those systems and bring their data in to combine with ours has given us more information, more data than we have ever had access to, and is allowing us to do different types of reporting and visuals for our end users. We're able to get things out to people quicker. We have a student profile or fact book. Every higher ed institution has that type of document or publication. It used to be that we would get our data clean after drop and add ended. We would have programs we'd run, then we'd take the data from the programs and dump it into spreadsheets and then have to make PDFs. And then finally, about a month and a half later, we had a student profile. Now, drop and add ends, we finalize our data set, we drop it into visual analytics, and we have our student profile a week after drop and add ends, so 3 weeks into the semester, and it's done, and people have that information available. It's a hard thing to track how every room is utilized throughout campus, and we used to provide some reports. They were very tedious. It took somebody numerous months because they were hand entering information about the time slots that rooms were scheduled. And so we actually collaborated. We have a wonderful Master's in Business Analytics program. We have, since we've implemented SAS, been hiring their students as graduate research assistants. And the first young lady that we hired came in and she put together a classroom utilization dashboard. So we can now look across every building on campus and look and see what the percentage of times rooms are utilized from 8:30 to 4:30, which are peak class times, and then within that, the percentage of seats that are used within those classes. So we know not only if a room is being used a large percentage of the time, but if the number of students in the class is actually optimal. And so that's been a great way to look at our classrooms across the campus and know whether we need more space. Are there certain size rooms we need? Are there rooms that we're not utilizing? And so are there perhaps buildings where we have rooms that aren't well utilized, but we could make them one larger room that would be utilized? So looking at renovating instead of building a whole new building. So it's been a really good problem-solving tool as we have been looking at the classroom utilization across campus. Of course, the classroom utilization, that was not something we could have done other than using SAS Viya. It gives you the ability to drill down. It gives you the ability for us, look at different time periods during the day. It gives you the ability to look at different room sizes. And so it gives us that specificity to be able to drill down and get to very granular levels of the data. The visuals are just fantastic because there are things you can show people in a visual that resonate so much more than me saying something. So, for instance, we typically say of the students that don't graduate, we lose half of them in their first year. Well, we have a path analysis of retention, enrollment, and retention and graduation rates that now shows we lose 800 students their first year, and in years 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 600. So seeing those numbers is a much more striking comparison to people than me saying, here's what happens. The other thing we uncovered from that in looking at it is of the students that come back for that second year, they have an 80% graduation rate. So the emphasis we put on first year retention is well placed because getting those students back their second year increases the probability of them graduating significantly. And we have retention dashboards that you can really slice and dice in so many ways. Gender, ethnicity, first generation, Pell Grant versus non-Pell Grant, by ACT score, by college. And so as different people across campus look at this, they identify different things that they go, hey, we saw this and we think, here's something we want to look at in terms of predictive modeling for what might identify students who might be at risk coming in. So that's been a great thing. And one of the things that we looked at, I was having a meeting with our faculty council, and they said in advance, they said, we're interested in looking at how students who take classes online their first semester do. And with very little effort, we were able to add, we had course information, we were able to add that as an option in our retention dashboard so that I could go to a meeting and say, here's how their retention changes and here's how their GPAs differ based on whether they're taking online classes their first semester or not. And so it makes it very easy to go from one thing to the next question that follows up and be able to adjust to answer numerous questions that we haven't really ever been able to answer before. First of all, when we initially rolled out our dashboards, I actually met with our president, our provost, and our senior vice president for administration and finance to give them their own little tutorial so that they immediately knew what we had available. I always, for the vice president, the senior vice president I report to, I constantly keep him in the loop, let him know about the feedback we're receiving from people, let him know how we're utilizing the dashboards, and it was a great thing that just happened recently. We had at Oklahoma State University, we had a retention conference, which was an internal conference. It's the first one we'd ever had. It had about 250 to 300 people across our campus that signed up to attend the conference. And I actually got to give the keynote and talk about our retention dashboards because we had just rolled them out. And so it was a great way to share what we were doing with not just the executive administration, but other deans and vice presidents and department heads across campus. Our campus was really hungry for this type of reporting tool and this type of report development and visuals and interactivity and dynamic reporting that we've been able to provide. I think that we are working with our campus. We've provided training for people that want to come and learn how to use the dashboards because what we really want is to make sure people are comfortable and are utilizing it, understand how to utilize the dashboards, understand how to obtain benefit from the information we're providing. Executives they have been using it as well, and so some of the things we have tried to do for them is make higher level dashboards that they have access to, that they know where to look for these because it gives them the big picture data. We are really fortunate. Our president, our senior vice presidents, they are enormously in tune with data and wanting information and wanting to make decisions that are informed by data. We've been really fortunate having the support from our executive administration. I think the culture of analytics in higher ed, everything, again, is happening so much faster. We've got to be able to react more quickly when we see changes. We can't take months to do some sort of study to come up with what should be happening. We've got to be able to have a data set that we can start looking at things and say, hey, here's what we've seen much more quickly and respond to it and be able to proactively respond instead of reacting several months down the road. We have someone in our office who has built probably 85% of our visuals, and he was not someone who had programming expertise. We implemented the SAS tools, and he just jumped on it and learned it, and he's fantastic at it because he, even without being a programmer, he's got this level of creativity that really serves us when thinking about the best visual for the best report and what works the best, what's the most benefit. We were able to have our student profile, probably 80% of our profile, out on our website within a week of going live. That was a lot of time spent prior to going live so that we could have those things ready. But I consider that to be a great success. I consider just the sheer volume of the dashboards that we have been able to develop this year to be a success for us. And that was really our first year goal, was to make data, make information more available to our end users and give them information that was much more flexible and dynamic in how that it can be used. And so that's stage one of our success. Another stage of that, again, is helping the campus become accustomed to that. And I think we have been successful in that. I think we certainly have, in addition to our executive team, we have advocates across campus that are very data-informed individuals, and so they advocate for this as well. And then I think our next stage of success, again, is looking at, okay, we have all of this information. We have the data, what's the information? There's that kind of cliche of we're drowning in data and starving for information. We're now at the point where we want to start looking at what is all this telling us and how can we benefit, what benefit can this provide to our campus once we start looking at some of these relationships. What I think is happening for us is it's changing the conversations. It's no longer a, can you give us these numbers? It's, we have these numbers and here's what we see and here's what we'd like to look at. How is this number affecting this other number over here? Or how are these combinations working together to help or not help a student? And so I think it's changing the way we have conversations, and we're looking more towards analytics and how we do modeling now based on the numbers we see, instead of just looking at all the different types of numbers and categories of numbers. The information we have been able to provide, again, has been game changers across our campus. We hear time and time again, we never knew this. The data, we now see this in the data, or we always thought this, and now we know the data tells us something different. And so being able to give all that to our campus and our end users and know that we have these partnerships across campus where our goal is now to take this and move our campus forward and to see how we can make things better is just a great thing and a wonderful time to be working at OSU for me. Academic ledgers are something that we've had for years and years and years, and they were a stagnant PDF that had 5 years of data, that had student data, faculty information, research expenditures, and financial information. And that we had them from the department up to the college, up to the university level. It's how our colleges, when they come in and have budget talks with our senior vice presidents, that they come in and they have this information with them. We've now completely rebuilt those as a dashboard. And so now a dean of a college or even a department head or even the president can get into any of these. They're on our public dashboard, so actually anybody can get into them. And you can drill down and you can see how has the student enrollment changed over 5 years, how has the faculty counts for tenure track versus non-tenure track changed over 5 years. What about the research expenditures? You know, how much external funding are colleges, different colleges and departments bringing in? And so people have been thrilled to see those now developed as a dashboard that's much more interactive. One of the things that we talked about was the fact that we've been able to collect information and connect with so many different sources across campus to get additional information that we have never had before. One of those is our Student Affairs has a database where they track card swipes. So as students go to different activities across campus, they can track what students are involved in. So being able to identify some of those students that might be at risk. So again, with the example using swipe card information from students and looking at engagement, if you see a student who their activity their patterns have shifted, that can be a red flag. If they've come in and they haven't really been involved at all, that can be a red flag because it's, research will show that students either feel connected or don't in their first 6 weeks of being on a campus. And so if you see a student that comes in and they have no activities at all, that should be an immediate red flag that someone needs to reach out to them, whether it's Residential Life or the First Year Success Office or their advisor, and see if we can get them involved. So I think there is some of that that helps with student success, but I think the more we get into the analytics side of it and looking at now what the retention data is telling us and how we can better identify a student who may come in and need some of the additional resources that we offer will be a great thing for us. We really want to expand this to include our human resource reporting, our faculty and staff reporting, as well as our financial reporting. We have started working with our what we call our HRIM, our Human Resources Information Management, and our Financial Information Management groups to start working towards that goal. And then in addition to that, Oklahoma State University, we are under what we call the A&M Board of Regents, so there are other institutions, Langston, Panhandle, NEO, and Connors, who are umbrellaed under that board, but don't have the same types of resources that OSU has. What we want to do is have, through a shared service model, be able to provide those campuses some of the standard reporting templates and then standard visual templates so that their administration can also benefit from this tool.